genealogist.com. Hope you're having a great day today. I had an interesting conversation recently with someone who really wanted to know what are sort of the strategies, I guess, that I could suggest for her to really stay on target or to be able to continue to acquire the information that she wants to seek. And then secondly, how does she get other people interested in what she's doing? Well, three things or three words come to mind. Talk, listen, and share. Talk wisely. Secondly, listen well. And thirdly, share generously. Now, in terms of talking, it's very, very important that you really take the time to share the stories that you've been able to glean from the many records that you look at and to put them in the historical context. You find some information about an ancestor who served in World War I or who was a Buffalo soldier or who served in the Civil War. Well, put that in the proper context. What was happening to that individual and what was happening to the family at the time that outbreak occurred? Was this something that took extraordinary courage to be able to leave a particular community and go and enlist? Or was this person drafted? How did they react to the draft when it happened? All of these are part of the family stories that are very, very important. Another part of talking is to talk to the elders, but to talk to them often. As well as that, consider expanding the circle of elders to whom you speak. You know, the friends of your elders are also part of the same community. And you might say, well, my grandparents have all passed away. I don't have anyone with whom I can talk. Well, if that community still exists, there's someone in that community who remembered your elders, who remembered your grandparents. And that person may also have some wonderful stories to share with you. So it is very important that you consider putting them on the list of individuals with whom you're going to speak, and speak soon, and of course speak often. It's very important that you go back, ask questions, come back with some additional information maybe that you picked up, and ask what their opinion is about that piece of information. So you want to talk wisely. But another word about talking. Have you ever attended a genealogy society meeting, for example? And people are asked to stand up, give their name, perhaps, and share some information on what they're researching, maybe just the state or the county. And people go around in a circle and they start to share. But then suddenly someone stands up and says, hello, my name is Susan Thompson, and I'm researching the Williams family from Accomack County, Virginia. And my grandfather was Williams, but his mother was a Jones, and I think she's from Richmond. And suddenly you start hearing parts of her genealogy that you really didn't want to hear. You want to get a few basic things. Well, it's important to take note. Right when that person starts going into all this detail that really the group doesn't want to hear at that time, you'll see people start to shift. They're beginning to shift in their chairs. They're fumbling with papers. Well, that's because sometimes a person is getting involved with the details of their research. And let's face it, the people who are interested most in the details are people close to you and close to your family, whose history you're talking about. Outsiders might be interested in your search. They're interested in the process. They're interested in helping you get past a brick wall. But sometimes people get too eager to share the pertinent details that don't allow others to really engage in that conversation. So it's important that one learns how to express what one's working on wisely. A trick to that is to always just mention perhaps an area that you've hit where you can't go any farther. You know, my name is so-and-so, I'm researching this family from Richmond, Virginia, and I tend to be stuck. I've run out of some documents. I need some ideas, and I welcome those ideas from the rest of the group. That's a way of presenting yourself a bit more wisely as opposed to going through your personal list of who begot whom, begot whom, begot whom, and so on. So it's important to always talk wisely. Listening well is also very, very, very important. Have you gone to any particular family gathering And you're really excited because now you've gotten perhaps the aunt or your favorite uncle to start talking and to share some story about when he or she was younger, and they talk about their lives or they talk about their memories of a great grandparent, and people start to hear some things that that they hadn't heard before. Here's some names that they hadn't heard before. Well, there's another part of listening well. Listening well sometimes means that you are able to interject good questions to the person who's telling to be able to get more information. But here's something that many people forget. And again, this goes back to the statement where people will say, oh gosh, I don't have any elders. Anyone who knew my great-grandparents, they're all deceased and no one knows anything. But guess what? Sometimes we try to go back as far as we can, as fast as we can, and we tend to forget something else. Number one, we forget our own stories and forget to share those. But secondly, when you're talking to someone who's in their 70s, don't forget to ask them for their life story. Remember, this is the 21st century. Well, the 20th century is also history. If you have a family that started out in Texas, and for several decades in the 1800s it's Texas, but now everybody's in California, or everyone's in Seattle, or people started out in Alabama and now the family's in Illinois, and sometimes between those years of the Great Migration from 1950 or 20 up to the 1950s, the family left the old homestead, and many families, particularly between 1930 and 1950, migrated away from the ancestral home or the original homestead where the family had lived. There's a story there. Get that individual to talk about it. Were they born in the home state? Were they born in Arkansas, but now they live in California? Now they live in Colorado? There's a story about the trip that they made, when they made the trip, what were the circumstances. Get them to talk about the 20th century as well, because just as much as you're trying to get that 19th century story out, you want to also remember the 20th century, and particularly because we're the early part of the 21st century, this is the best time to get people whose memories are still sharp, who can talk about those years as well. Individuals who, even if they didn't live, if they did not live, during the Great Depression, they have older siblings who did. They heard other stories on how that impacted the family. So that's important as well. And to capture. And then once they start to talk, listen well. If they allow you, turn on the audio recorder and allow them to talk. You can sort through all of this later and make sure that you make a commitment to putting that story back out there just because you've collected it. Keep in mind one thing. You may have taped your grandfather at a family reunion in 1982. Grandpa maybe is now deceased. Have you ever transcribed that tape? Well, it's essential that you do it right away. Part of that listening is to doing something with that information once you've captured it. And you know what? The lifespan of tape is only about 15 years, 15 to 20 years. So you're overdue if you've not transcribed that tape and put it in another format and made a transcription for the family. It's so important. All of that's part of listening well. But finally, I also said to share generously. Many people think, oh gosh, I can't put together a really nice family story. I'm not a writer. Our family is just a regular family with regular people. We didn't do anything heroic. We haven't saved lives, and we don't have politicians in the family, so there's no book to write. Well, you know what? Everything about sharing your history doesn't always have to end up in a book. We're in another century now. The internet is the great equalizer. People have all kinds of platforms on which they can share their data, but share it. Share it. Share it. You know how many people will say, gee, I would love to see some old pictures, but my aunt or my uncle won't let the pictures go. Well, you know, there are digital cameras. Take pictures of the pictures. You don't have to take something out of someone's possession to be able to capture it. But don't you hoard it either. You share it, and the internet is the perfect place to do it. Oh, I know. I don't know how to build a website. I don't have that kind of skill. Well, guess what? If you're watching this video, you're using a computer, you know how to click on, you know how to click off. Start to consider the fact that you can, if you don't know how to upload something, have one of the children or grandchildren show you how to upload a photograph. There are all kinds of platforms out there where you can share photographs with the family. You don't want the public to see them, you can make it closed just for the family. There are wonderful sites, Picasa, Flickr, there are all kinds of ways. And of course, I always recommend that you consider putting it out there in a different way. Now, a year ago, I might not have said or encouraged you to create a blog, and I'm not going to insist that you do so, but I am going to encourage you to start to read blogs. Start to read genealogy blogs for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're going to learn how others are sharing their family stories. Trust me, you will be inspired. But then, there's something else about a blog. You're going to learn how to reevaluate what's important to you. You're going to stop and say, oh my gosh, I can also share the old community. I don't have to be able to go and walk through the old house that might still be standing, but another family lives there. Well, show the neighborhood. Start to take pictures. They're wonderful things. You don't even have to travel. There are so many applications. Just on Google alone, you can type in an old address, and trust me, with that old address, you can then go type in that street address and download it and go right online and see the old neighborhood where the family lived. These are free features that you can do, and so of course I encourage you to do that. With a blog, you can have a blog in 5 minutes. Again, blogger blogs can be set up with just a minimum amount of effort. But again, I said I'm not going to insist. What I am going to insist that you do is start to read blogs. Because once you start to read blogs, it'll click. You'll start to realize, oh, I can share this particular story on how I found Aunt Martha's wedding certificate, how I was able to determine the correct age of my grandfather, how I learned a lot just by looking at the community, because you're going to read other stories of what other people did. You're going to learn how others have taken some ideas and interviewed some of their ancestors just by reading blogs. Trust me, you will be inspired. My hope is that you'll be inspired enough to create your own blog too, but I won't insist on this video that you do it. But again, there's so many ways to stay on track. As I said, talk wisely, listen well, and share generously. You always hear me say on my weekly podcasts to share what you find. This can't be emphasized enough. You don't have to have the 30-foot family tree on display, although those are fun to look at. But there's so many ways to put your information out there. And part of what you're doing, you're not collecting this information just for yourself. You're doing it for the community, you're doing it for the family, and you're putting it out there for the next generation. Anyway, stay on track, tell your story, and have a good week, have a good experience until the next video, and we'll talk some more. Anyway, take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.